Back from vacation, we missed Ladybug's heat while we were away. And so we have another month to wait, which is okay. That puts us into November. Look, they have a 9-month gestation, so that means we're going to have December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August. Late summer calf, which is okay. Not a bad time for it. As we progress towards her calving, we have plans to dry her off. And that means we're going to be drying her off around probably April, May. Our plan was to have Lacy bred, having kidded and already in milk when that happened. But sadly, our plans for that have been changed too. Let's get into that. If you remember back in the early spring, back when we were at our old farm in Connecticut, a lot of you will remember that epic day where we decided to get goats back onto the farm. Hi, do you want to come with me too? Are you trying to sell yourself? I know. You're being friendly, aren't you? You want to come home. You want us to get 2 goats today. This is bad. I'm gonna start doing a, we're already here with 1 goat, right? We could fit another one. No, this is where I get into trouble.
And we're here.
We're here, and we already are gonna be caring for like 2 goats.
I know, right?
We might be getting more goats today.
These are exactly what my eggs look like.
This is what happens. This is why. What did I warn you in that? They multiply. This is how it happens when you get baby goats. Cute little things.
They're just in quart bags, and they're like half. Okay. But I froze them flat. So let me just.
The goats were not for us. They were for Kay's aunt, who has the goat herd over the hill. And when we were out shopping, picking up her goats, we found Gizmo and kind of fell in love with the goats there and decided to bring some back. Not with the idea of using them much at Squash Hollow, our old Connecticut homestead, but with the idea that we would use them here at this homestead. We knew we were coming here and that goats would be a good thing to have here on this property. Plus, we knew we would be right over the hill from Kay's aunt's, who has this really great goat herd. And when it came to growing the herd and breeding, we could work together with her.
Do you ever feel like all homesteading is moving around hay so you can fit more animals in the barn?
I had sworn off goats for a long time because they just seem to give me so much trouble. But I gotta say, these goats have become, well, one of my favorite animals on the property. They are really good, these couple goats here. They're just good goats, well-mannered, and they've been a really nice addition to the farm. When we picked up Gizmo, our smaller goat here, the younger one, we picked her up with a buck. At the time we called him Bucky Boy. He was that all black buck that you saw her jumping around on our big rock mountain with.
While I'm feeding them, see how excited they are to drink. It's important though not to overfeed them. So I give them 2 breaks while they're eating their bottle. That'll help them feel fuller.
He was not ours. He was Kay's aunt's buck, and we were bringing him to her when we made the move here, the very first move. And we did that. We brought him here, got him over to Kay's aunt, And he's been over with the herd over there all summer long with the intention that he was going to be that herd's buck. He was going to be the one who was breeding with all the does over there, bringing in really good new genetics. He was from a really good line of good milking does. And we were going to breed Lacy with him. We were going to breed Lacy with him this month, because if you count from November 5 months, that brings us right about to the time when Ladybug will be dried off, and it would be just perfect. Lacy would come into milk while Ladybug's dried off, and we would have no break in our farm fresh raw milk production, and we could still have our delicious farm fresh lattes and our glasses of milk at night, and everything was going to work out well. But as all you homesteaders and farmers know, that's rarely does everything work out exactly as you plan or perfectly, and unfortunately we've had a change in events here that have prolonged our timeline. So what happened? West Nile disease happened. This has been such a wet year in Pennsylvania, the mosquito population has exploded, and Bucky Boy contracted West Nile disease, which is kind of crazy. I've never heard of that or experienced that myself, but when he was acting funny, kind of listless, Kay's aunt had the vet down to see what was wrong. The vet checked his temperature. He had a temperature of 105, and the vet right away said, "We've had a boom in West Nile disease. Temperature of 105 is a good sign that's what he has." They did some tests to make sure it wasn't rabies or anything else, and the results came back. The vet said it was West Nile disease, and sadly Bucky Boy died. He is now in a compost pile somewhere, and the only buck that is big enough to breed any of the girls over there and our girls here. If you remember, we got 2 bucks. We got Bucky Boy was the big black one, and then we had this little guy, we called him, and little guy is still little guy. He's not going to be ready to breed this season. Generally the does will come into heat throughout the fall, and by the time little guy's big enough, we'll have missed this season. So we have to change our plans with breeding. And what are we gonna do? Well, Kay's aunt is replacing Bucky Boy. She's getting a new buck, which you'll see I'm gonna be going to pick him up probably next month. And that means our whole timeline has been delayed. I believe this new buck is from the same breeder that we got Gizmo from. She'll be bringing him to Pennsylvania about 2 hours away, and then I'll be going to pick him up from that spot. And it's around the time of the holidays, which is around the time that my parents are going to be down visiting, which means that might delay some things with pickup of him. It puts us into December, and then waiting for the girls to come into heat throughout December. 5-month gestation period, if things take the first go around, puts us to January, February, March, April to May, and May, possibly June, before we get kidding and are back into milk. So we most likely will have a gap. We don't know how big that gap will be, that we don't have our farm fresh, delicious milk. But there's not much we can do about it. The best thing we can do is just make the best of it and adapt, and know that if for a month or two we have to buy milk, well, it is what it is. And that's homesteading. You just have to adapt. Things are going to go wrong. Animals are going to die. Even with good management, good practices, you're going to have losses. And in this case, when you have just one male that you're hoping to, be the breeder for your flock, and he's gone, it means you gotta scramble and make do. So fortunately, Kazan is replacing him. That's good for us, because otherwise we'd have to go and find another option C out there somewhere. So we're really fortunate we get to use the buck that she's gonna replace her buck with, and we don't have to wind up getting one for ourselves. And we'll help out by going to pick the buck up, and it'll work for all of us. We'll all have our girls all bred by the same buck. And then we'll, as usual, just adapt and change with the plans. It's like kind of the saddest part of all this. Homesteading is such a long game, and you make these long distance plans. That buck was purchased in the springtime. Kay's aunt knew that we were coming from Connecticut, so she could pick from some genetics in Connecticut that were good quality we could bring with us. She has already used up the good genetics in her area here. There we were in Connecticut, moving to Pennsylvania, it worked out perfect. And he had really good genetics. He came from a long line of milk producers. They were not show goats who looked pretty but didn't produce. Not that all show goats don't produce, I'm just saying some are more focused on the looks than actual production. Pop up! Come on, girl, come on. Don't be jumping up. He was from a long line of really good milk producers, good milkers, and now having planned almost 9 months ahead of schedule, having everything worked out for that buck to pass on those genetics. Now those genetics are gone to us. They're not available here in Pennsylvania anymore. And so our plan B will be good, but it won't be as good. The genetics are not what we were hoping for. But you do, again, you just work with what you can. You work with what you got. Things go wrong and you adapt. It's like my buzzword for the day. Sit. Pop! Good girl, good pop. I really think it's a gift you can give your children. In tomorrow's episode of Homesteady, we talk about a gift you can give to your kids. It will last them a lifetime, and it doesn't have to cost you anything. Produces that they can hold up a dozen eggs or a bottle of milk and smile and say, I made that.
It only needs a bit more hay.
Tune in tomorrow morning when we're releasing this video. If you like our videos, there's 2 ways you can support our show. Click here to become a Homesteady Pioneer. It's $5 a month, and it helps us produce this show. Or do all your Amazon shopping through www.amsteady.com. Both of these ways help us produce this show. Thank you so much for your support.